How's it going, everyone? December 7th edition of the Fantasy Fanatics MMA podcast. I am James Lynch. He is JHK. If you have any questions, post them in the chat. We'll get to them as soon as we can. If you haven't watched the show before, every week we preview an upcoming notable fight. And on this edition, we're going way ahead, but we're looking to a really cool fight that's coming up here in February. Islam Makhachev taking on Beneil Dariush, main event, UFC Fight Night. We don't know the location, but, probably will be Vegas, although now we're seeing they're changing some of the locations for some of the Fight Night cards. So TBA is where we're at right now, but we do know this is 5 rounds. Really excited to dig into this one. But before we do that, make sure you hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. If you want to submit questions, you got to subscribe to the channel. And also make sure you download the Fantasy Fanatics MMA app where you can put your picks in. We will be doing our Underdog Picks for UFC 269 at the end of the show. So make sure you stick around for that as well. Okay, excited to talk about this one. We had to. I mean, Islam Mahashiv, one of the biggest names in MMA right now. Beneil Dariush, one of the kind of dark horses in that division in terms of what he's been able to do over the next little bit. We always talk about how we got here, and let's start there first. And I'm going to get off the screen here for a second so you guys can see this beautiful thing that we got here from our man Mike. Look at that image. I love our artwork, by the way. Shout out to our guy Dave Fretz, who put all this together. But yeah, so how did we get here? Well, we got here because Justin Gaethje beat Michael Chandler. We can start there first. Gaethje was the former interim champ. People are like, why is Gaethje getting the shot? I mean, it's not officially announced yet, but that's likely what's going to happen next. Is Gaethje's going to fight the winner of Saturday's fight at the time of recording this of Dustin Poirier and Charles Oliveira. He'll get the winner. And, a lot of people are like, why is he getting it over Islam? Islam's had a 9-fight win streak. Well, I think, again, people forget Justin Gaethje is a former interim champion. That's got to count for something, right? Like, I know the circumstances led to him getting that interim shot, but still, the fact that he was the former interim champion, I think gives him enough reason to get that title shot. And the second thing is, the guy he lost to retired. Like, the last time Gaethje lost a fight was years ago, if you go before that. So to me, he's right up there. I mean, I wouldn't have even had an issue if Gaethje had come back right into a title shot, because again, the guy he lost to was retired. So he's getting that. Islam did everything he needed to do in his last fight. I'm not discrediting his performance whatsoever. He absolutely dismantled Dan Hooker, and we're going to talk about that in a bit here. But the reason we're here is because Beneil Dariush also defeated Tony Ferguson. He's right up there in the rankings. I don't think he had the type of fight that immediately made you think of him getting a title shot. So he was right in the mix. And here's Islam. He's coming off a great win too, but I think one of the knocks on him, and it's not necessarily his fault, is he just doesn't have a lot of wins over ranked opponents. Well, you're getting a top 5 guy next. That's what he wanted. And I do wonder if there's a little bit of hesitancy of putting this fight together with the fact they have the same manager. But that's we can discuss that later. But just first, your thoughts on this fight coming together. This seemed like a no-brainer when Justin Gaethje won, in my opinion.
Yeah, exactly what you just said. Everything hung on the on the balance of or the result of Gaethje versus Chandler. If Chandler would have won, I guarantee you they would have gave Makhachev the title shot, right? But he didn't win. Gaethje won. Gaethje screaming off the top of his lungs, and they're all managed by the same guy, right? So it's like,
that's true, yeah.
Who do you give the shot to? I guess Gaethje is much more deserving. The reason why I think so is because of strength of schedule. Right, his strength of schedule is insane, and you guys got to look at it too. Tony Ferguson won how many fights before he got a title shot?
Yeah,
it's like
a while.
Makhachev Makhachev is in that kind of that position, right? His strength of schedule is not as strong as the other guys, but he's beating everybody pretty dominantly. And this one, guaranteed, is going to be for a title shot, right? We have to be.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, 100%. The winner of this should be fighting for the title next. So that's how we got here. All right, let's get into each fighter here as we usually do. We should mention the odds. We do have, and again, shout out to Mike, man, best producer in the business. I don't care what anyone says. He could produce any show in this industry. But you look there, Mahashiv open is a -430 favorite. Dariush open is a +330 underdog. I want to say that's actually pretty low for Islam, if I'm not mistaken, because I'm trying to remember what type of, you know what, just give me 1 second here. I just want to have a quick look at the odds for Islam in his past fights. Where are we here? Best fight odds is what I want to bring up here, just kind of for argument's sake, to see where he normally is here. So you look at the odds typically. I mean, he was -500 against RDA. He was -300. So he's actually a bigger favorite against Dariush than he was against Hooker, although we didn't really know how he'd do against Hooker because of, against strength of schedule, -500 as well. So this, if you look at it here, it's kind of par for the course for Islam, other than his earlier fights, right? Like when he fought Nick Lentz, he was -160. Like looking back now, that's like, but we didn't know, right? Although actually he closed as a -300. Anyways, just wanted to bring that up because it just goes to show how much of a favorite he's been in most of his fights. So this is sort of par for the course with Islam Makhachev. You look at the tail of the tape here. Islam Mahashiv, 30 years old. Beneil Dariush, 32. That's interesting, isn't it? Right? Like you kind of think of Islam being a little bit younger, but he's actually not. Like he's 30. He's not like super young. He's he's in the prime of his career right now, but Dariush is only 32 as well. So it's not like he's fighting a guy who's much older. So only 2 years of difference there. You look at their 26 fights for Dariush, 22 for Islam. Part of that is the activity. Beneil's been a lot more active. And part of that as well, we should bring this up, is Ramadan, right? Like I know he won't fight during that period. So that does take, the opportunity of him taking like a short notice fight or taking a fight that, might have been presented to him. A lot of the Muslim fighters, they just won't fight during that period. And I don't blame him because you have to fast, right? It's not a big deal. 21 wins apiece, 4 losses for Dariush. 1 loss for Mahashiv. We'll talk about the losses in a bit. 5 knockouts, 3 knockouts for Islam. So it's interesting that Beneil has more finishes, although he does have more fights. 8 wins by submission, 10 wins by submission for Islam. So obviously we know who's got the better ground game there. 62% finish rate apiece. They're both 5'10", and physically Dariush has a slight reach advantage. So this is what I love, is that this matchup is literally 2 fighters who are sort of at the same spot at this point. I would say Islam has been more dominant and maybe a bit more flashy in that regard, but Dariush has some good wins as well. I remember him getting some really key victories over like Scott Holtzman. I know Holtzman's not like a big name, but still the way he finished that fight, that really woke up people in the weight class, so to speak. Let's look at their last couple fights. So we'll start with Islam. Dan Hooker submission win. I mean, A+ performance. No one's done that to Dan Hooker in terms of finishing him by submission that quickly. Thiago Moises defeated him as well late in the fight. That was a really good win too. Drew Dober, that was the one that really was kind of like, okay, this guy's definitely good, because Dober's kind of like one of those guys to he's a good measuring stick for the weight class. Davey Ramos, and then he beat Arman Saryukin, who, if they have that rematch someday, which hopefully they will, that's going to be just a hell of a fight, because that was a really, really close matchup. Obviously, Islam won, but Arman, I think, stock went up in that one as well. So, they're calling him the next Khabib. There's a lot of pressure on him. He's got to deliver. He's got to deliver in a big way in this fight. This is another opportunity for him to get closer to that title shot. So just first, your thoughts on Islam Makhachev and what he brings to the table.
He brings to the table exactly what Khabib brings to the table, except for he has much more pressure. One thing Khabib didn't have was he didn't have anybody coming before him. And Islam did have Khabib, right? He does have Khabib to kind of live up to, that's the measuring stick of success, is to go in there and run through the division and become the champion. One thing about Islam is this is his first run at the title, right? And he's only 30 years old, so he still has a few years left in him. I don't think he's the type of fighter that's going to retire like Khabib will. I think he's going to be running through this division for a while. Yeah, when you look at his track record, the last 3 fights, we just look at the last 3 fights, all submission wins, just dominant. Not really much, pushback from his opponents, right? Once he gets them to his world, which is the ground, he completely runs through them. He's very impressive, man. Not the most complete fighter, right? But he's very good at what he does. And sometimes in this sport, if you're very good at what you do, you can dominate everybody, for example, Khabib.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And again, the last, that last win, like had he won a decision against Dan Hooker, we wouldn't be feeling as hyped as you would be for this fight, I think. But the fact that he's done that and he did it so quickly, and granted, it just that he does what he does so well. He gets you to the ground, he, smothers you and basically takes you out as quickly as he can. That to me, showed that little bit extra that you want to see in a title challenger eventually, right? And so that's what sort of has got people really amped in this fight. Okay, let's talk about Beneil Dariush. He is also on a nice winning streak. Tony Ferguson won that fight by decision. Good win. It was a fight where, there's no point in that fight that Tony Ferguson was in it. Dariush definitely did what he needed to do. Ferguson, a very durable guy. I think if, Dariush had that performance against most fighters, he probably does finish it. Had a nice decision win over Diego Ferreira, who, again, has maybe fallen off a bit, but still a ranked opponent. And then the knockout win over Scott Holtzman, very impressive. The Jakar close win is actually one that I don't think people give him enough credit for, because not only was that one of Jakar's first losses in the UFC, it's the first time he's been finished. And they sort of, if you watch that sequence of how that fight ended, Jakar was trying to gun for his head as well. It was almost like Johnny Walker, Ryan Spann, almost in the sense that both of them were really throwing heavy and you felt like someone was going to go down, but I would say is a little bit more technical and not as wild as that fight was. But the fact that he knocked out Jakar, very, very, very impressive performance here. And that was a fight too where it was sort of determining who the better prospect was at the time, and it obviously was Dariush. And Frank Camacho, love Frank. one of the nicest guys you'll ever interview or meet in this sport. But Frank's he is what he is. He's an exciting fighter, but not someone that you can really, take seriously in terms of the rankings or anything. So that was also a good win for him as well. The last loss he's had was actually against Alex Hernandez. And I remember that fight was on short notice. And, Hernandez is one of those guys that if he's on, he will knock you out. And that's exactly what happened. There's kind of a theme here with Dariush's career. And I'm just going to bring it up real quick. It seems like he's sort of been past it, but Dariush is one of these guys that, there is sort of, at least early in his career, there was sort of a way to beat him. Ramsey Nijum. I think people forget this. Ramsey Nijum was a big underdog in that fight, and he went out there and he finished Beneil Dariush in the very first round. Similarly, this happened with Hernandez as well. 42 seconds, went out there and blitzed him. And then he had a couple other hiccups here. Michael Chiesa, although Chiesa's, looking now, I don't know how Chiesa ever made lightweight. He's a big guy. And then Barbosa, this is, Barbosa in his prime. He was looking great as well, but something changed after Hernandez fight, and then he went out there and went on this nice run. And if you remember Thiago Moises, he was, I believe, coming into the UFC on short notice, won on Contender Series. That was a big fight for him to take on, because I know Moises lost his last fight, but I still think that's a work in progress and a guy that the UFC is very high on. And then you see the wins after that, Dober, Close, and everything else. So he's really turned things around. And again, he's at a point where he's in the prime of his career. And he also comes from a great camp at King's MMA. Over there, they're really grinding away. You got Marvin Vettori, Gaslam. There's just a good stable of fighters over there. And you're seeing the fruits of their labor in the last couple of performances from Beneil Dariush as well. And another just really, really, really nice guy. I don't think these two have ever trained together, even though Islam trains at AKA in California and Dariush is also in California at King's. I'm sure they know each other. I'm sure they're familiar with each other. They have the same manager, but I don't know if there's any sort of camaraderie, so to speak, because that's something I would be curious about. Not to the level of, say, like Riddell and Fiziev, what we saw last week as well. But anyways, your thoughts on Beneil Dariush and what he brings to the table. The one thing I will say before you answer here, Dariush very well rounded. We know he's got good striking, and his ground game's very good too. That's what makes this fight interesting, because we knew with Hooker, we didn't really see much of his ground game, and that was something that you felt like could happen, and that's exactly what happened, which is Islam submitted him. So I think it's a much different animal trying to submit a Beneil Dariush, who himself has a great ground game.
Yeah, I think he started his career as a grappling specialist mostly, right? And then he kind of turned into the striker when he went over to King's MMA. It's interesting what you said about what happened after that Alex Hernandez fight. And I remember interviewing Beneil Dariush, I believe, ahead of the Drew Dober, either the Drew Dober fight or the Frank Camacho. And I asked him, like, man, what's different about you? And he said he got all his injuries treated. He said he was going through camps with his neck all jacked up. He couldn't train properly for any of those fights. And the result is what? He was getting knocked out. Edson Barboza, Alex Hernandez. He had that draw with Evan Dunham, which was very weird, right? And,
weird fight, yeah.
So he said that's the reason. He said now he can train like a real athlete, like fully, without as many injuries, without major injuries. And that's what his career turnaround is basically, coming off of. Beneil Dariush, man, like you said, he is the more complete fighter among, of the two, right? He can do everything. He can knock you out. He could submit you. He could wrestle. He could grapple. In the Tony Ferguson fight, I think he ripped apart Tony's knee. Remember with that heel hook? Like Tony wasn't the same after the second round, right? Like Beneil can hit you with submissions from all angles. Islam kind of, he's kind of limited in the submissions, but he's very good at what he does, right? So with Beneil, man, he's been impressive. This is his second run towards the title. And he's doing what Charles Oliveira did, right? Charles Oliveira is the champion right now. Beneil's doing that. He's in the midst of that. Can he get to the title? We don't know yet. He's facing probably probably the most dangerous guy in the division. What people think, what I mean? So Beneil, man, impressive as all hell. I love the guy. The guy is all action. I feel like people don't appreciate him enough for how exciting he is, because man, he goes in there and he puts it all on the line, man, and he does what he has to do to win half the time, but sometimes he just throws caution to the wind and just throws his fists, just like in that Drakkar Close fight. Even in what was the other fight that he was just going crazy at? I think the Holtzman. Yeah, he just did that spinning. I think wasn't he losing both those fights, or maybe he was kind of
he was in them. Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say he was losing, but it was they're dangerous
close
fights. I mean, exactly.
Yeah. So with Beneil, man, I can't say anything bad about him, dude. It's just like he's done everything right, and he's not a guy that's going out there and changing himself to get fights. He's getting fights with his performances. You got to respect that.
Let's get to our picks. Love this fight. And one other thing I'll quickly mention, it's kind of interesting too, and this is something we can maybe even talk about the main event on Saturday, but like even their like quality of opponents are kind of similar here, right? Like Dariush just fought like your Holtzmans and your Drakkar Kloses. I mean, Close I think is a bit better than people give him credit for. Frank Camacho, Islam, same thing. Like he's fought like, Davy Ramos, guys that just aren't like sort of mainstay, sort of notable guys in the weight class. So that's what also makes this fight interesting is like strength of schedule is kind of similar. I mean, I don't even know who you'd say has the better opponents. Like, I guess Islam because he fought Hooker, but then he fought, Dariush fought Ferguson, but is it like Ferguson fell off? Like, I don't know. Like, this is what makes it so interesting. And again, you got two guys who are physically very similar, age-wise very similar. It makes it very interesting. But one guy is the clear favorite. And that's going to be my pick is going to be the clear favorite here, Islam Mahashiv. That was very undramatic, by the way. I should have built that up a little bit better. But no, the reason I'm going with Islam in this fight is because I just feel like his grappling, his takedowns are going to be a problem for anyone in this division. And that includes Beneil Dariush. Now, I mentioned it earlier. Beneil Dariush has a better ground game than Dan Hooker. He's not going to go out there and lose a first-round submission. I saw people, and again, I get people being hyped about Islam, and I know everyone wants to see him as champion, and there's all this hype, and the fans are very passionate. I see this all the time when it comes to any mild criticism about Islam, Khabib, Chimaev. You won't hear the end of it. And I get that. I like the passion. I think that's great. But Beneil Dariush is not a guy that's going to get finished early. I did mention those hiccups earlier in his career. Islam's not a power puncher. The way to beat Beneil early is you blitz him. Islam's not that guy in terms of a power puncher, right? He does have good stand-up, but he's not going to go out there and knock out Beneil Dariush in the first round. He's also not going to go out there and submit him in the first round. This is a guy with a very good ground game, half El Cordero trained, BJJ guy. He's not going to go and lose by first-round submission. So what I think is going to happen is I think this is going to be similar to the Thiago Moises fight in the aspect of it's going to be pretty competitive early on, but at some point Islam's going to take over a little bit. He's going to start to get those takedowns, and the pace he's going to put on Beneil Dariush is going to be a little bit too much. And I think later in the fight, you're going to see a sort of a sway in the fight, and it's going to go towards Islam. Now, does he finish Beneil Dariush? I think it's possible, but I think it's going to be later. I think it's going to be like a third. I won't even say third. I'll say fourth or fifth round finish. I know that's crazy, and I know we really haven't seen Islam go the 5 rounds before, and we don't know what the cardio is like, but you got to imagine he's thinking a title shot, so he's got to be working on that anyways. Dariush is very tough to put out. Like, if you look at Dariush's losses, they're not late finishes, right? Mind you, he hasn't been in a lot of 5-round fights, but still, like, he's a guy that typically gets finished early. So I don't think you'll see an early finish. Don't be surprised if this goes to the distance. That's the other thing too. Like, this could be a very close fight. I think the odds are a tiny bit off just because I think Dariush does have the threat of not only his knockout power. Islam's been knocked out, right? We always forget that, and that was a factor in the Dan Hooker fight. If Hooker was able to keep it upright, he wasn't able to, and Mahashiv took advantage and submitted him here. But I think this fight will be much closer than the odds indicate. I'm not counting up Beneil Dariush in this fight, and it's not a knock on Islam. It's more of giving Dariush the credit that he deserves in this fight. So I think if Islam does finish, it'll be later, but I think more likely will lean towards a decision in this one. Even though I know a title shot's on the line, he was going to look for that finish. I just think Beneil's not a guy who's going to get finished late in the fight. I think he'll survive, and it will go the distance. So I'm going Islam by decision. Who are you going with in this one?
The last time Beneil Dariush was taken down was in 2017. He's had a gang of fights since then. You know who took him down? Evan Dunham. That was the last time he's been taken down in a fight. Every fight since then, he's taken down every opponent except for Hernandez, because Hernandez knocked him out, right? Mm-hmm. But he has 4 takedowns against Moises, right? He has 2 takedowns against Camacho, takedown versus Close. He didn't even go to the ground with Holtzman, and he has 5 takedowns against Ferreira, and then his last fight he had 3 takedowns against Ferguson, right? So he's clearly decent at wrestling. He's able to take those, his opponents down, but that's not going to matter in this fight, right? Because he's facing a guy that's just a complete grappler, right? A complete wrestler. And one thing that I look at this fight and I see is that Beneil, he's so good on the ground. He's so good off his back. He's good everywhere. He's good at attacking the legs. And I think that's going to play a factor in this fight when Makhachev takes him down. I feel like Beneil will be able to find the openings to get up with his jiu-jitsu. And then, he's gonna get taken down. You're right. He's gonna get taken down, and Islam's gonna ride him on the cage, and I feel like Beneil has the cardio to last. Right, he's able to fight that off and use his jiu-jitsu and maybe even conserve energy in certain positions on the ground, so he could burst out of it or kind of transition or scramble and get up. And once he does that enough times, Islam might have to just stand and trade and strike with Beneil. And that's what I'm banking on. I'm banking on Islam not being able to hold down Beneil Dariush and Beneil Dariush being able to stand with him and knocking him out. I feel like Beneil is going to be able to do that. I'm going out on a limb on here.
I love it.
I think Beneil is going to be able to do this, man. I think he's riding high, man. I think he's so confident in himself and his skills, and he's going to do it, man. I think he's going to go out there and he's going to shock the world. And because everybody thinks Islam's going to win. Everybody thinks Islam's going to go out there and maul him. But I don't think so. I think Beneil has a good chance of going out there and defending well and then keeping it on the feet and then knocking him out with some crazy combination. You know how he does it. Beneil by knockout early, like second, third round.
Wow. Okay. Bold prediction here from JHK. Listen, I get it. I mean, the verdict's still out on Islam as far as a striker. I mean, he struck with Thiago Moises, but again, it's Thiago Moises, low, sort of a lower ranked opponent in the weight class. So, and you're right, Dariush is, and here's the thing too, Dariush has had adversity. I'm a very big believer in this. And, we have a main event this Saturday is, like between Poirier and Oliveira, two guys who've had their fair share of adversity and embarrassing adversity too, with both of them, right? Oliveira missing weight and having all those issues in different weight classes. Poirier, losing to McGregor early in his career and then now getting the 2 wins over him. So Dariush, same thing. Like he had that embarrassing loss to Hernandez. That was a fight that he should have won. It was against a guy that no one knew about, and Hernandez took advantage of it and took him out. And we haven't really seen that from it. Actually, Islam's had one loss, but I think people almost forget about that. It's like you don't even remember that he was knocked out a couple of years ago. So it's entirely possible. I do think the odds are off a little bit, and I think if you have any sort of sliver of hope that you think that Dariush can win this, I would recommend betting the what is it, the plus 330. Like that's crazy. So we'll see how it goes. I just think Islam's going to be a little bit too much, but we'll see. This is not Dan Hooker. This is not a guy who's going to get finished very early. And the only way I think Dariush could get finished early is if he fought like a Gaethje and Gaethje just goes up there and blitzes him, right? Mm-hmm. Mahashiv's not that type of striker. So that's where I think, and he's not going to get submitted like we mentioned too.
And another thing is, with Islam, it seems like he has tough weight cuts every single fight. Did you see the last video?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
And that's going to catch up to you eventually, right? Something's going to happen eventually where your weight cut doesn't go as planned. And you might make weight, but it's going to affect the fight. It's going to affect your cardio. And maybe I'm banking on that too. I don't know. Yeah. I'm just, throwing that out there.
No, I like that. And plus, we'll have lots to talk about when that fight comes around. So yeah, we'll see. I've already been doing the pros picks for that fight, and I'm already getting some interesting answers there. So I'm interested to see how the rest of it goes. Okay, let's get to your questions, everyone. Again, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. We're going to be doing a Q&A for the rest of this. That's how we do it. We'll also get to our Underdog Picks a little bit later. And make sure you download the Fantasy Fanatics MMA app. iPhone, Android, doesn't matter. It's available on all platforms. I'm an Android guy. I hate Apple. That's a podcast for another day, but Android all the way. So yeah, it works great on my phone. And again, it is the best app out there. Like I've used a lot of different MMA apps. This one is super smooth. The images are updated. The odds are updated. They do a great job over there, and super happy to be doing the show for the Fantasy Fanatics and the All-Star and all them. All right, let's get to Antoine. One of our regulars. Antoine, thank you very much. Antoine, you got to let me know where you live one of these days. Once I can finally get back to the US, which I have been to the US a couple times now, but when it's past that 72-hour mark, I am going to go to the US, cover a UFC card again. We got to meet up and get a beer. A lot of these guys who are, supporting the show. Hey guys, awesome breakdown. Who should the loser of this matchup face? And do you think the winner could somehow slide in front of Gaethje and steal the title shot? Okay, let me get to the second part of the question first, and then we'll get to the first one. Unless there's an injury, I don't see how Gaethje doesn't get the next title shot. That would be crazy. And the thing is, like, another thing that people got to remember about Gaethje getting the shot is that was one of the best 3-round fights we've ever seen. Yeah. Nothing against Islam, a quick finish, and again, he did everything he needed to do, but typically the way people look at fights is they like a really, I don't know, Gaethje always brings it. He's called the highlight for a reason. Every single one of his fights is awesome, and I don't think you'd find anyone who doesn't like watching Justin Gaethje fight, so that all plays a role in that as well. In terms of the loser of this matchup, looking at the rankings right now, it would have to be maybe the loser of the title fight or something along those lines. Someone ranked fairly high, though, because you got to think that one of them is chomping at the bit. Michael Chandler's still out there. And then you've got these guys like Fiziev who won last week. Like there's guys that are, slowly moving up the rankings. We'll have to see how the rest of the division unfolds because there are a few key fights sort of coming up. And I just either way, whatever's going to be next for the loser, this is going to be a good fight. I mean, there's no doubt about it. So that's all I got to say.
I think the loser has a couple options, right? I think Chandler, he hasn't fought either one. I think the loser fights Chandler.
There you go.
That they slide him into a good fight. The winner, I doubt. I think there's like you said, only way they slide in for the title shot is there's an injury to one of the fighters, right?
Yeah, exactly. This is hypothetical, but if Islam wins the fight and Justin beats the winner of 269, who would you have in Gaethje versus Mahashiv? That's a fight I really want to see. I'm every now and then I'll do this with certain fighters. Yuri Prohaska is one of them. I'm currently on this line of thinking right now. Until I see Islam lose a fight, I'm going to keep picking him. I think that's the way to go. There's certain fighters where it's like, where someone will get a win and you're like, oh, they just kind of squeaked that one out or whatever. I haven't got that with Islam yet, other than the one loss he's had, but that was years ago anyways. I'm going to ride this Islam thing as long as I can. So if I had to pick, I'd have to go Islam, but this is a good test for him. This is not Dan Hooker. It's not a guy who's, has some weaknesses on the ground. It's not a guy who had to do his camp in the US and had to take it on short notice. This is a full camp, Beneil Dariush, at one of the best gyms in the world at King's MMA. This is going to be a true test. Like this is why I'm glad he's getting this fight, because like this is really this could almost be a title fight. Honestly, like the caliber of opponent he's getting here is a guy that's right in the mix. You could have absolutely made an argument for Dariush being in the next title fight. So yeah, we're going to learn a lot in this fight. What do you think? Who would you pick? Gaethje? Well, would you pick Gaethje or would you pick Islam right now?
I pick Islam to beat Gaethje. If he beats Beneil, then I'm gonna have to ride with Islam to the title. I think, like you said, you got to ride with them until they fall, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Hype 3 MMA. Good to hear from you, buddy. One of my regulars on my channel. Good morning. Love starting the day with these live streams. Well, hey, we love doing it too. If I could do, honestly, like if I ever get to a point in my career where I could do this like 5 days a week and like cut back on the interviews a bit, or have fighters join me on these things, that would be awesome. Like do like something every morning, like a radio show that's like live stream. I'd be down for that. But anyways, that's a career aspiration of mine. How much does the mystique of a fighter like Islam play a role in the outcome of his fights? I'm not sure what you mean by mystique. We know what Islam does. He's going to take you down. He's going to try and submit you. And if you mean like in terms of like every fight he gets better, I guess there's a little bit of that. I would say Chimaev's more like that. Chimaev, to me, like if he fights like an Usman or Luque or one of those guys, that to me is more of a mystique because we haven't seen him get outside the first round. We've seen Islam, have decision fights. We've seen him go more than multiple rounds. I think we know what we're getting with Islam at this point. So I wouldn't necessarily say there's any mystique there. Am I wrong here? Let me know, JHK.
My view on the question is, I think I receive it different. Is that when I think of mystique, I think of like Islam. He goes in there like Habib, takes you down, mauls you, submits you. That's the mystique. Yeah. Maybe I'm wrong with the definition of the word, but okay. Maybe that, that aura of him doing that and that could affect the opponent psychologically. Maybe it can affect the opponent psychologically. Once they get to the ground, their back hits the mat, then, they feel like, oh man, it's pretty much over. Maybe it does that to them. And, you've seen Mike Tyson, Mike Tyson beat his opponents before he got into the ring. Yeah. So, that I think that's part of it. That Conor was like that too, right? Conor was doing that to all his opponents when he was rising up through the ranks. So there is something there. I feel there's always something there psychologically. I've been asking that to the fighters too a lot. I've been asking them about the psychological side of the sport, and I get some interesting answers.
Yeah, and by the way, you've been doing a great job. I love the stuff with the coaches where you'll talk about a specific fight. I know I saw your stuff with Mike Swick talking about Islam as well. That is, I really like hearing stuff like that because a lot of times you get like, guys like us, like, no offense, like we do a great job, but there's people that have actually been in the trenches and sort of have this inside knowledge and stuff. And Jim's a really good, sort of analyst. What you see is what you get with Jim West. So you've been doing a great job of that. Just plugging that if I can on the All-Star here. Got to check it out. Sinister Story. What's up, buddy? Always good hearing from you. One of my Patreons, a really, really good guy. Always like hearing from him. Thank you for joining. Same with SRO. Since Rakic and Yan is happening and Yuri and Glover looks like it's happening, who should be next for Anthony Smith? Well, Smith's injured, right? I think people forget that. I think the idea was they were going to do Smith and Rakic. I think with Anthony Smith, there's a few options. I know some people want to see him fight Dominic Reyes. I want to see Reyes just get a step down. Maybe Smith's that guy, but I don't know. Smith's tough to put away, as we've seen, in multiple fights. I feel like Reyes should get a bit of a layup. He's had just too many tough opponents. As far as Anthony Smith, Johnny Walker seems like a fun fight. I don't know. Or something like
Ozdemir.
Yeah, well, yeah, that would be a rematch, but that would be interesting because because remember Smith came back in that fight. But you know what? I wouldn't mind that at this point. Like that was a fight where Ozdemir was actually looking pretty good and looked like he was on his way to winning. And then, or maybe I'm getting that in the Gustafsson fight mixed up. I can't remember. But there was one where Smith came back, or maybe it was both of them. I don't know. I got to go back and look, but I'd be okay with that because that fight was a few years ago, so no issues with that.
Smith has fought everybody. If you think about it.
It's true. Yeah, no, he has. He's done a great job. Loads of people are saying if Islam wins, he's had the easiest track for a title shot. Who, in your eyes, do you think is the easiest road to the title in any weight class? I wouldn't say he's had the easiest. Dan Hooker's not an easy
Chandler
fight.
had the easiest. He had one fight.
Yeah. Chandler's up there. You know what's one? I'm going to go way back here for you, older fans. Patrick Cote getting the title shot against Anderson Silva back in the day. I think he beat like Drew McFedries and like Ricardo Almeida to get that title shot. Actually, I'm gonna just double check that real quick. There's been a few. Actually, you know what? I'll tell you one right now, and she's fighting on Saturday. Juliana Pena. She lost 2 fights ago to GDR, got finished in that fight, and then she beat Sarah McMahon, who, by the way, has been submitted how many times by opponents? There's sort of the book is out there on how to finish her, but that was crazy. Okay, check out this winning streak here. Cote got submitted by Travis Luter. He beat Scott Smith, Jason Day, Kendall Grove, Drew McFedries, and Ricardo Almeida. He beat Almeida by split decision, and that got him the title shot. That was one up there. And it's nothing against you, Patrick. I love you. Great guy. Had the opportunity to interview Patrick a number of times in person. Just a great dude and a good Canadian. But that was one that comes to mind as far as an easy title shot. Sailor's Clips. He'll have a 10-fight win streak if he gets the title fight after this win. Who are these people? Who are those people? Not sure what you're asking, Sailor. I don't know if you're upset that we said that Islam's going to get the shot, so I'm not really sure what he's asking here. Can you dissect this one, JHK?
Maybe he's talking about people that, after he wins this fight, they're still going to say he doesn't deserve a title shot. And
no, I don't think people are going to say that.
There's always going to be people like that, you know how it is.
But it's such a small minority. Like, I don't know. I feel like if there's any mild criticism on Islam or Khabib, people act like that's the majority. People don't think that way. Like, there's a small percentage of people that I see some chatter on my YouTube comments and stuff saying Islam's boring. Well, those guys are morons. They didn't watch the last fight. Or Islam needs to prove more. Like, that's such a small percentage, I think, of the fan base. I think most people know if Islam wins this fight, he's going to get it. Again, I'll say it for a third time, second time, whatever it's been on this show. Gaethje is a former interim champion. Gaethje's exciting. Gaethje just beat Michael Chandler. Those are all reasons for him to get this title shot. Again, you could go either way. If they would have given Islam the shot, no issue there. But Gaethje being a former interim champion should hold some weight. That's all I'm saying. I think Dariush is a very dangerous striking. I mean, he trains with Giga Chikadze. Yes, very true. Very true. So there we go. That's another reason. If you had to choose one final meal, what would it be? That's not a silly question. Steak. I love a good, well-cooked steak. That's like my favorite meal. What about you? Do you have a preference? Pizza?
No,
I don't know.
I do not have a preference of my final
meal. You don't
meal.
have a favorite meal, really?
There's too much food out there to, I guess my final meal would be LA Carby, if you know what that is.
No, I don't know what that is. What is it?
You better, if you go to a Korean restaurant, maybe you try to order that.
I'll check it out. Yeah, I'm sure we got some here in Vancouver. We're very multicultural here in Vancouver, so I'm sure they have something. I'll have to check it out. Okay, you got to DM me that. I don't know what you said, but just DM me and I'll go check it out.
I'll send pictures.
There we go. What's your Paul Woodley 2 prediction? I did a video on this yesterday. I was surprised that Woodley took this because. So I'll just mention 2 quick things. First thing, I'm surprised that they did this fight because it's a week away. And like you'd think with a rematch like this, they'd really want to build it up. So I'm kind of surprised that happened. And then there's this conspiracy theory that I saw a guy's YouTube channel talking about that this is the plan all along, was that Fury's faking the injury. And then because the buzz wasn't good, which I'll agree with. There wasn't much buzz going into the next week, and that they had to put Woodley in here to add some more buzz. I don't know about that because, again, you're only getting a week's worth of promotion. But my prediction is Jake Paul. Look, Woodley, has he been training boxing? Maybe. I don't know. But Woodley lost the first fight. I don't think Woodley was paid off or he chose not to finish Jake Paul. I just don't think Woodley has that killer instinct because we haven't seen that in a very long time, not since he finished Robbie Lawler. So to me, that's where I think Jake Paul will probably win again because he's been training for a full camp.
People are completely retarded if they think that Tyron Woodley was paid off to lose to Jake Paul. Like, I don't understand.
Yeah.
And get the tattoo on his finger too. What
Yeah.
are you thinking? Like, I don't think you're gonna get paid off to do that. But yeah, I picked Jake Paul. I picked Jake Paul in the first fight. I picked Jake Paul in the second fight. Woodley, man, it just seems like he is not a boxer, man. He's not a boxer.
No.
He's an MMA fighter, right?
Yeah.
And Paul's a boxer, and he's gonna go in there and do his thing. And you know what's funny about that is, Fury brought his whole family in to promote that fight, and they couldn't even do a good enough job.
Yeah.
And his father is hilarious, and his brother is like one of the greatest boxers of all time, and they still couldn't pump it up. So maybe there's something behind that. Like there wasn't enough, so they had to pull him out and put Woodley in there.
We all know Beneil has high level BJJ, but so far he's been more top control kind of guy, not someone who attacks submissions from the bottom. How do you think his bottom game is? You train that too. Like, it's not like you train one and not the other. Again, like, you look at some of the guys he trains with, you look at his coach. I'm not very concerned about his, submission defense or being on his back or anything. Like, I'm sure, I would assume, again, this is like, I'm not in the gym. I can't interview him. There's a lot of things that I don't know, but yeah, I mean, I would assume he's got that area covered.
I think he trains a lot with RDA on his grappling.
Well, no, anymore though. RDA is not at Kings anymore, I don't think, is
no,
he?
But I think they still train with each other, like outside of Kings. It's because Beneil has his own gym,
right?
Separate
Okay,
from
gotcha.
Kings, so they could train whoever they want, probably. So, yeah, if you're training top, you're training bottom, you're training everything, right? Beneil is a complete fighter. We just talked about that, how complete he is. I think on the ground, he's more complete than Islam just great at what he does, right? So that's the separation.
Do you agree with John Jones saying if he fought Izzy, it would be a bad night for Izzy? Due to John as an insane wrestler, you would take him down. I mean, when was the last time we saw John really take anyone down? I mean, no, but seriously, like, he usually stands with most of his opponents. I guess the Gustafsson fight, right? That was a quick submission. I honestly don't know. I mean, who knows what John is like these days? I don't know.
John only takes down wrestlers because he wants to prove that he has better wrestling than the wrestler. So when he goes in there against a striker, he's not going to take them down. He's going to go in there and try to strike with them to prove that he's a better striker. And that could cause some problems for him against Izzy, because let's say, what's his name? Jan Blachowicz did that, right? He didn't wrestle at all. I'm pretty sure that fight would have turned out a lot different.
Any update on the Korean Zombie, John?
Yes, there is an update on the Korean Zombie. I saw him do a video. His shoulder, the shoulder that he separated, the shoulder that he had surgery on, is jacked up again. He said that the UFC is recommending him do stem cell therapy to fix the shoulder, because if he does get surgery, because that's what the doctors are telling him. Doctors tell him you need to get surgery. If he gets surgery, he's out for another year. Pretty much his career is over. You know what I mean? Like, he's not that young. And, if you come back after a shoulder surgery to a contender fight, that's completely too dangerous for somebody, especially in that featherweight division. Hopefully the stem cell stuff works that the UFC recommends. If it doesn't, man, I don't know what he's gonna do with his career.
Who would you guys pick in a hypothetical matchup between Giga Chikadze and Max Holloway? I pick Max Holloway.
Yeah, Max.
I don't as great as Giga is, he's not gonna put away him. Max Holloway's never been finished. And I think that durability, the championship experience, that would be a 5-round fight. You'd have to go Holloway just slightly. I mean, obviously, we'll see how this Calvin Kattar fight goes. I think that's a tall task to come back after that beating from Holloway and fighting a guy like that. And we'll preview that fight when it comes up. But yeah, I'd have to pick Holloway.
Yeah, so. I'd pick Holloway. Did you see Holloway, the video? Like, his hand, it was in a cast, his right hand.
No, I didn't see
it was in a cast. So I don't know if that fight's gonna happen early 2022. It seems like he's injured. Something's wrong with his hand. And the Korean Zombie, he's probably the next one in line to fight Volkanovski. He's injured. Who's next? I feel like Josh Emmett.
Zabit, where you at?
Slide in.
You coming back, or what's going on? Zabit might be the only one. And finally get a shot, right? And then we can finally get 5 rounds and stop this nonsense of if he can make it. So we'll see. I'd be down for that. Is the UFC going to try and do Edwards and Hamzat again, since they still don't want to give him a title shot? What did I hear? I heard Usman might be out for a bit, and then also, so that might change.
The rumor for UFC London or something.
Yeah.
The headliner?
I think it sounds like that's what they're trying to do. I think that's kind of what I've been hearing. But come on, they've done this 3 times already. Like, move on. I don't know. or they really just want Leon Edwards to lose. I guess
it seems like it. It seems like they don't want to give him a title shot. They don't want to give him anything worth of value. You know, I mean, they did throw him a bone with the Nate Diaz fight, and he kind of ruined that with that last round,
which is dumb because, like I always tell people, if that was a 3-round fight, which it should have been, right? Because because of the Diaz rule. He'd be winning 30-27. We wouldn't even been talking about this. It's like Burns and Wonder Boy had 3 rounds, but that fight didn't. It didn't make any sense. So I don't know. There we go. That's I feel for no one's had worse luck over the last 2 years than Leon Edwards. It's been terrible for him. I would like Oliveira to clear out guys at the top of 155 only to draw Habib back. Would love to see Habib versus Jiu-Jitsu Phenom. It's never happening. Habib's not coming back. Have you seen Habib recently? Like him coaching, he's put on some weight. He's not. And not that he's being lazy or anything. I think that he's not coming back. Come on, people. Enough with this.
What did you think about the comments of Eugene Behrman? Like, did you hear his comments in that interview that he did?
No, I didn't know.
Talking about Habib. Like Habib talks more shit now than he did when he was a fighter.
I didn't know. I didn't hear that. So Eugene was sort of saying that. No,
because he respected their team because they were like results fight, not involved too much with the talking shit back and forth. But now it's like Habib's retired and he's talking more than ever. But in a way, he's kind of defending Islam.
Yeah, is that? But okay, is that Habib saying this in like interviews, or is this him tweeting? Because if it's him tweeting, we probably know that's not him tweeting. It's like Islam going back and forth with. Okay, because I was going to say, because like if you look at Islam going after RDA, I'm positive that's not him tweeting that. You know what I mean? Which is weird because RDA used to be managed by that manager. So I don't know. I just think it's like, I think that manager knows how to put his fighters' names in the news because everyone's going to write about it. So I think that's part of it. But yeah, if that is the case, who knows? So I don't know. Morning, gents. Do you think if Islam and Arman fight again, Islam takes it? I'm leaning more for Arman. I'd have to pick Islam. Again, I'm picking Islam until he loses. Yeah. That's my motto. Adesanya is the least well-rounded champion in the sport, and he's arguably the weakest in the division. So of course, Jones is right. I mean, until someone beats him at middleweight, I don't think you can really say that. Yeah, he had one fight where he had an off night. He fought a guy in Blachowicz who was able to take him down. That's it. I mean, that's like saying Max Holloway's not well-rounded because he lost to Poirier at 155. Like, I don't know. Like, because Poirier, he outstruck him. Like, does that mean that he's a bad striker? I don't know. It's like you can't gauge everything off one fight and say some guy's not well-rounded. I don't know. That's my opinion. I think Izzy's very good. I think people still hate him for whatever reason. Maybe it's the way he promotes himself or whatever, but I like Izzy. I like watching him fight. He's probably one of my favorite guys to watch. And I think it's crazy that even at this point, people are still questioning how good he is, like Saylor right here. It's crazy. Look, finished Paulo Costa. You know how many people said Paulo Costa was going to knock him out? Tons. He silenced those critics. He beat Whitaker. I know you said that, but it wasn't in a way of where you were underestimating Izzy. I think you felt that Costa was going to do better, and I think we all did. Beat Vettori. Like, I mean, just time and time again, this guy shows up.
He's made it look pretty easy, to be honest with you, against the best guys in that division. Even Whitaker knocked him out. You know what I mean? Like, I don't understand how people are saying that he's the least well-rounded. I don't know. I think he's pretty well-rounded, man. He's done pretty decent against the guys that actually tried to take him down in the middleweight division. Not much success. Vittori had some takedowns, but he didn't do nothing with it. Izzy got up. You know what I mean? So he does have good defensive wrestling. But he's not going to go down. I can see what he's saying. You're not going to see Adesanya go for takedowns. Let's just say that right there. Right?
Yeah, no, of course. Why would he? Play to your strengths. Play to your strengths. That's how I look at it. Bout Better says this is an easy fight for Makhachev. I wouldn't say easy. I think he wins. I think the odds indicate that, but I don't think it's going to be easy. Beneil Dariush is not an easy fight for anyone. No. Seriously. Anyone in the top 5, I think Beneil does quite well. Cote was a draw in Canada at the time. But the fight wasn't in Canada, so I don't think that was... I wouldn't say
that the fight where Cote like came out in the round and he just his knee buckled. And
his knee buckled and stuff. So I know the UFC was hot on Canada at that time because St. Pierre was still fighting and all that. I wouldn't call Cote a draw though. Like it's not like I'm sure they like the fact that he was a brawler and a guy that had a good personality and all that. But I don't think to say that he was like a big draw. I don't necessarily agree with that. So. We'll see.
James, what kind of seat do you have? One question for you. What kind of seat do you have?
Secret Labs, the best chairs in the business.
Secret Labs. I just ordered a Corsair chair.
Okay, never heard of it. These are the gaming chairs that like everyone uses, and they're expensive. But I'll tell you what, I have never had any back pain sitting for long periods of time since using this chair. This thing is amazing. It keeps you upright. And I got the black one. Some people get like the flashy colors. I don't like that. I want it to be like not very noticeable.
Yeah, I got the charcoal.
Yeah, there you go. So yeah, you got to get a good chair if you're doing a lot of video
Yeah,
stuff.
I have a terrible chair right now. I just bought it, so I should be.
There you go.
This.
Always got to upgrade. We had a great discussion about food on your live stream that we did last week. I want to ask the same to John. What are your favorite foods, Korean and foreign? You kind of talked a little bit about it there, but if there's any other foods,
food, food, like LA Carby, like Carby, like those are the two top. They're like meat, beef, pork, and foreign food. My favorites are Mexican and Thai and Italian.
I like a good pad thai, nice spicy pad thai.
Oh,
I was telling on my live stream last week. I don't know how you feel about this, but I love like spicy, I like Indian, and have you ever had Indian with like naan bread, some like really good like fresh rice, and then some like really I like spicy stuff. So like a spicy chicken, not like a buttered chicken, but like I forget what they call it, tandoori chicken or whatever it's called, and then it has some spices in it. That is perfection. I mean, it knocks you out cold because all the carbs and stuff, but it's really good. That's like definitely one of my top 5 meals. We have a local place here in town. It's like authentic Indian. Love it. I
was in Thailand for 5 weeks, man. It was just Thai food.
And I heard the meals are super cheap there too. Like how much does it cost to eat a meal?
It's like $1.
Oh man. Meanwhile, here you're paying like $40 for a dinner. It's crazy. So what are you going to do? Are we sure Jeff Neal should be fighting this weekend? Not up to us. I mean,
what's going on?
Probably not.
Did you interview him?
I did interview him, but it was before he got the DUI. Lucas interviewed him after. I don't think anyone knew about it until Junkie reported the story, but just so out of character for Jeff Neal. Like of all, like if you ask me, a list of 100 fighters, Jeff Neal would not be on the list of ones that I think would get a DUI. So I don't know what's going on. I hope everything's okay. He probably shouldn't be fighting if he's out drinking and with weapons and all this weird stuff. But look, the UFC, this is also the same promotion that bailed Jeremy Stevens out of jail just so he could fight. So, there we go. Mahashiv has no selling power. To North American audience, maybe not, but I think you got to look internationally. Islam is a huge draw, and I can tell you that from a content perspective. Anything about Islam draws very well. John knows this too. It's no secret. So,
dude, like Russia, the Caucasus, the Middle East, like the Muslim countries, it's like insane. And look at the numbers. Look at his social media numbers. And have you ever seen Zubaira? You know Zubaira, right?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
He has I think he has 1.2 million followers on Instagram.
Yeah, no, I know. He does. Yeah, all those guys have really, really big followings.
Yeah.
Same thing with this question. Habib needed Conor to become mainstream. Mainstream in terms of mainstream North American, maybe, but outside of the US, he's a star. Everyone knows who this guy is. Remember the reception he got when he came back with the belt? Like he's a very big star. So, Josh Emmett being back is very exciting, but against Ige worries me for his return and layoff. Yeah, I would feel the same way. And Emmett's not young either. I want to say he's 36, so we'll see.
But
we're going to get to our Underdog Picks.
I think Emmett has probably the most power in his punches in that division.
Oh yeah, yeah. He's fighting a guy in Ige who's never been finished, so that's what makes it interesting.
But he takes a beating though. You know what I mean? So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Boys, I think we all just got the R word pass. I don't know what that means.
Because I said retarded.
Oh, anyways, whatever. He does a lot of Korean fight media. Zombie? I think he means Korean.
He doesn't. I don't think he really likes Korean fight media.
So that being said, who'd you pick between John and Izzy? I'm pretty sure most extras would pick John after seeing what Jan did. I probably would pick John as well. I'm always the guy who picks the mainstay in the weight class in most cases. I did pick Izzy against Jan, but maybe I got a little bit too caught up in what Izzy's been doing. But I would always pick the mainstay in the weight class in most cases. You think Cruz has another title run in him, or do you think he loses to Pedro? I think he loses to Pedro.
Yeah, I think Pedro we
talked about this on the show when we previewed the fight. So there we go.
Pedro has one of those performances.
What about Giga versus Fiziev? Different weight classes. Fiziev's 155.
But a good stylistic matchup. Let's just say that.
If Till loses to Hall, should he move back to welterweight? I don't know if he can make welterweight. He had a tough time even making that, and I don't know. Big. Yeah, he's a huge guy. It's like I saw him when he fought Gastelum.
He should actually go to light heavyweight, to be honest with you.
Yeah, he might have better luck there. We'll see. You see Marlon calling out Aldo for 5 rounds like Marlon didn't lose their first fight. Is he really calling him out? Ugh.
Yeah, for
Marlon,
5
you
rounds,
need a bounce back, dude. You haven't won a fight in a while. So
no, he just won his last fight, right?
Marlon, no, he lost. He lost to Merab.
Was that his last fight? He fought Merab?
Yeah,
Oh,
Merab Dvalishvili. And remember, he rocked him and almost finished him, and then Merab came back and won.
oh, that's right. That's right.
I know. There's so many fights, man. It's tough to keep track. Thoughts on last weekend's Pettis versus Horiguchi? One of the best comeback fights of all time. One of the best highlights in Bellator history. That came out of nowhere. And did you see Anthony Pettis bet 10K on his brother? He was on his way to losing that, and then out of nowhere, it just is flashing. And look, people say what you want about Horiguchi. The guy had a layoff, injuries, you name it. He'll be back. He was winning the majority of that fight. That was shades of Anderson Silva, Chael Sonnen #1. That's what that fight reminded me
It
of.
wasn't even a comeback. It was just like a shock. I think it was just like a shock because it was just one punch, spinning back fist. I'm working on getting an interview with Pettis, right now. So hopefully I can get that.
Do it. We'll see. Okay, let's get to our underdog picks here real quick. There's a couple underdogs I like on this card. But I'll just go with the obvious one. And again, if you've been following me for a while on this show, if you've been watching this podcast, the obvious one is Charles Oliveira. I mean, you have the lightweight champion right now as plus money, plus 135 across the board, plus 145 on some of the books here. I like Oliveira. I've already explained numerous times why I like him. I think it's a 50-50 fight. Could Dustin win? Absolutely. But I just think when you can get a champion at underdog money, and I think Oliveira, some people, I've heard a lot of different things. First off, I've heard Oliveira doesn't have any cardio. Well, it looked like he was doing quite well against Ferguson over 3 rounds. Oliveira doesn't have a chin. He got rocked by Michael Chandler's hardest shot, survived that, came back. I think also, I don't know how much Poirier's wins over McGregor really mean that much, in the sense that I don't know what McGregor we have these days. I really don't. I mean, and it's not discrediting those wins. It's just that, like, I don't know how good Conor is right now. And then you go to the fight before that, the 2 Conor fights, he had a pretty close fight with Dan Hooker. So I don't know, like it's a 50-50 fight. And again, you get the champ at plus money. I think that's worth a stab. Just 2 other quick ones I'll mention here as far as some dogs on this card. I like Erin Blanchfield as an underdog against Miranda Maverick. I think Erin is the real deal at 22. She's not talking about being future champion or anything, but you do see little glimpses of her being very, very good here. And Miranda needs a win. She was robbed in her last fight. She definitely needs a win here as well. I also like, as one last pick, I like France over Garbrandt. Again, we talked about this earlier. Mainstays in the weight class. France is a flyweight. Garbrandt is not a flyweight. Garbrandt has taken a tremendous amount of damage throughout his career. He was knocked out 3 times in a row, 2 times by Dillashaw, whether he's on PEDs or not, it doesn't matter. He still got knocked out. And he got knocked out by Pedro Munoz, who last time I checked isn't really a knockout artist. So, and now you're moving down a weight class, which usually means you're more susceptible to the knockout. France has knockout power. I think we could see a knockout here. So the fact that you're getting France at plus money against a guy in Garbrandt who knows what he is these days. Like, I don't think Garbrandt is the same Garbrandt that fought Dominic Cruz. I'll take some plus money on that. So those are some ones that I'm looking at as far as underdogs, but the main one I'll stick with is Oliveira. Who do you like as far as an underdog pick this week?
I completely agree with you on Kai Kara France. And I'm looking at Jeff Neal, at plus 105 against Ponzinibbio. We've seen Ponzinibbio get clipped and finished.
Yeah.
He got clipped and finished by Lee, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like Neal, a little bit more crisp striking and more power than Lee. I think he could go in there. Maybe his head's not where it's supposed to be at, but maybe he fights better that way. Maybe he needs that chaos to perform, because we haven't seen him perform like he normally has in his last couple of fights, right? So I think this will be his bounce back fight. I like that at plus money. And even like Paiva at 245 against O'Malley. I don't know. Paiva is a guy that nobody really talks about, but he is a dog, right? He'll go in there and
the line's a bit off on that one. My only concern with Paiva is that you got a flyweight coming up to bantamweight. He's probably going to struggle with that reach, and O'Malley's a pretty fast guy. Not to say it couldn't happen, because I think, again, O'Malley's a guy that has performed well against the competition put in front of him, but it's not great competition. A couple of those wins are against guys that aren't even in the UFC anymore. So that's one knock on O'Malley. And Paiva is still, he's got knockout power. We'll see. I don't know. I think O'Malley probably wins, but that's interesting. The other one I'll just mention is, we talked about him earlier, is Emmett and Ige. I picked Emmett. I think Emmett wins. I think he's the better fighter on paper. I think he's I think it's going to be like the Fontenaldo fight, in the sense of, I think Emmett's going to land the harder shots, but Ige might outstrike him. I don't know, but I think that's an interesting one. But if you like Dan Ige even a slight bit, I would maybe bet him as well, because I think we don't know what Emmett's going to look like after all the injuries and all that. But we'll see. I think Emmett probably wins that. So yeah, those are just some quick picks that we'll do. Let's get to some more questions. We got about 5 minutes left here on the show. And again, appreciate you watching. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. Whose O goes first, Chimaev, Brady, or Rakhmonov? I'll probably go Brady, just because he did struggle a bit in that 3rd round against Chiesa. That's the only thing I'm going off.
I'm high on Rakhmonov, man. I think that guy is a guy that nobody talks about, but he's at Sanford training too. So, he has
Is
a
he
fight
managed
coming
by?
up next
I think I
year.
asked this before. Is he managed by Danny Rube?
Yeah, Sayat.
Love Sayat. Love Sayat.
Yeah.
By the way, how cool is Sayat giving the hug to Fiziev after the fight here? Just because you know how good of a guy Sayat is. He's one of the easiest guys to work with in this industry. So shout out to him. That was cool to see. If Emmett gets a knockout win this weekend, how many fights is we from a title fight in your opinion? He's at least, well, now that we just talked about the lack of contenders, maybe he's not that far off, but I don't think he knocks up. Yeah, I don't think he knocks out Ige. Ige is, okay. I mean, you look at who Ige's fought: Cater, Zombie, guys with knockout power. I do think Emmett might hit a little bit harder than both of those guys, but still, I don't think Ige gets finished. We'll see. You never know. Anything can happen in a fight. Jones is arguably the best wrestler in the UFC. Working with Cejudo, if he fought Izzy, I would bet he takes him down and chokes him. Well, that fight's never going to happen because John's fighting at heavyweight now. I don't know if you guys have checked, but the chances of him making 205 now are pretty slim, and I doubt Izzy goes up to heavyweight. Come on. So there we go. But yes,
and I wouldn't put too much stock into him.
Into Cejudo. Yeah, I know. Yeah, same thing. What's up? I appreciate all the work you guys are doing. Fight of the night prediction for this weekend. Ooh, great question. Probably the main event. And if not, maybe Ige and Emmett could be fight of the night for sure.
I think Ige and Emmett might steal the show.
Kevin Lee had a harder schedule of opposition while climbing the lightweight ladder than Islam and Dariush, Matthews, Mustafayev, Trinaldo, Chiesa, Ferguson, Iquinta, Gillespie, Oliveira. You know what? I'm glad you're pointing this out because, John, I don't know about you. I don't know how much content you've done this week on Kevin Lee. The amount of hate this guy gets and the amount of people saying he sucks. It's like, what planet are you living on where, like, do you not remember him fighting Tony Ferguson for an interim title, him going 9-2 to start his career off? Yes, he's had a slump, but to say he sucks is just stupid. Like, he's losing to good guys. And the other thing that people, like, I guess forgot is that he fought Daniel Rodriguez. It was a late replacement opponent. And D-Rod's not an easy opponent for anyone. And Lee's coming off major surgery. Like, no one's talking about that. They're just like, oh, Kevin Lee, 4 of 5 or whatever he's lost. And it's like, but you're not looking at who he's fought. So I'm amazed. And I get Lee's talked a lot of smack. I think he even said some stuff about D-Rod after the fight, but come on, guys, you can't ignore the resume that he's had. He's had a tough schedule throughout his career, and I don't think people give him enough credit for that. So I'm glad you brought that up, not to throw shade on Islam or Dariush, but just to bring up the fact that Kevin Lee has fought good competition, and Bellator saying they're not interested. What are you guys doing? You think anyone knows who your welterweight champion is right now? You bring guys in like Kevin Lee so you get familiar with them. That's, to me, a mistake by them. I don't know where. I think Kevin's going to probably box if I had to guess now. I don't think he's going to go
combat.
Yeah, something like that. But just kind of a bad mood. It might be a pay issue as well, but don't say you're not interested. We're happy with our roster. Well, no one knows who half your welterweights are. You got to get guys like Kevin Lee in there so people get familiar. That would be my advice. Do you think Usman retires by the time they give Edwards a title shot? Probably. I mean, the way things are going, I don't know if Leon's ever going to get a title shot. Cote, Loazo, and GSP had a push, as you mentioned. The UFC was pushing Canada. That does not mean they were a draw. David Loazo and Rich Franklin. I'd love to go look at the viewership on that one. I don't think it was very high. The Crow, as much as we all love him here in Canada, I don't think he was a draw. I don't think Cote was a draw. You said the word draw. That's what I'm going off of.
Cult following, more like.
Exactly.
Right?
Chikaze is very talented, but his only good wins are Barbosa and a Wash Cub. Before that, he was fighting a bunch of journey. No, I'm not going that way. Barbosa's very good. Barbosa finished Shane Burgos the fight before that. You can't discredit that win. He's absolutely deserving. Listen, I was the guy who said that exact argument leading into the Barbosa fight, and that's why I felt Barbosa was going to win. Once he beat Barbosa the way he did, I was a believer. You got to be a believer too. Come on. The Russian market is huge for sure. All these Dagestani fighters have huge social media presence. Exactly, Jack. You got to tell our buddy Boat better that.
Jack attacks.
Since Volk says he wants to jump to 155, how do you think he does against the top 5 in the champ? He'd be competitive. I don't know if he'd win a title. There's some pretty big guys in that weight class.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough road if he actually goes up there and fights some of the guys at 155.
Take 2 more questions. Is there any philosophers or philosophical quotes? I don't even
I'm going to tell you guys
right
now. Philosophy is a bunch of bullshit. I don't believe in none of it. To be or not to be? That is the question. Get the fuck out of here. Like, who gives a shit about what people said 15,000 years ago? You know what I mean? Like, who's a philosopher? Everybody's a philosopher now. You could talk and you're a philosopher. There's like a million philosophers on YouTube. go check them out. They're probably better than.
By the way, do you think when we all get older and they look back on like the history books of like, oh, I just used this inspirational quote, it's going to be from some like Instagram star because everything's changed, right? Like back in the day, it was like, you know, Thomas Jefferson or like someone like that, you know, someone that actually did something like influential in our lives, as opposed to someone who has like 1 million TikTok followers or something. I don't know. That's how things are going to go. It's going to be funny. 2 more questions here. I watch Zombie here and there. He hosts and produced the Korean fight reality show where all the fighters smoke cigarettes. What?
He did not host it. He did not produce it. There you
go. John
produced it and he just put it on the channel. That's all.
There we go. JHK setting the record straight.
You know? Yeah.
Whitaker Vittori in a fight. Whitaker's the second best middleweight in that division.
Oh,
he's going to give Izzy some problems. Marlon Veller called a rematch for Aldo, not Rice. Yes, you're right. That was who it was. So the person who said Marlon, it wasn't Marlon. It was Chito Vera. And Chito doesn't have a leg to stand on. I know he beat Edgar, but Aldo's ahead of him. Aldo should fight Dillashaw. That's the fight to make next. That makes a lot of sense. Anyway, Sinister corrected his mistake. That's good. I feel like people are questioning Charles' cardio too much. If he wins, cardio probably isn't going to be much of a factor because he finishes the majority of his opponents. I agree. Yeah, I have agree. But let's see what else we got. I have some other potentials. Cowshare to beat up Robinson. Maybe. I've heard some people pick her, but I think Jillian Robertson will probably win that fight. We will see. What are you guys looking forward to the most in UFC in 2022? Just the return of Chimaev, I think. I mean, keep it simple.
Man.
Yeah,
I'm
and
looking
Rakhmonov.
to see what Rakhmonov can do in that welterweight division. I think he's going to slowly creep up like behind the scenes while Chimaev gets all the clout and, the attention, and he's just going to run through guys and he's going to creep up into that top 15. He might not fight anybody of significance, but he's going to be there by the end of the year. I'm interested to see what happens with him.
I don't think Izzy ever tries to be the double champ again. Not who the current fighters are in that weight class. Like, there's just no incentive. Jones is a draw. I love Yuri. I love all these other guys in the weight class. There's no draws in that weight class right now. That was the appeal of him moving up. Well, at the time, I think he thought he could beat Jan. That was why he moved up. Last question. Lee should have taken a bounce back upon his return, but the UFC always throws these guys into the fire. Cerrone desperately needed one, and they gave him Morono on short notice instead. Great point. You know what, though? I think it's because Lee gets paid so much that they're like, well, you know what? If you want to get paid like a big name fighter, but I completely agree. Like, what? Like, if you're trying to protect an asset, you don't feed them to the wolves when they come back. Like, D-Rod I remember seeing that fight and being like, what? Like, that's not an easy fight. Like, I think I still did pick Kevin Lee, but I'm like, it's still not like a clean cut win. Like, had he come back and fought, say, like, I don't know, Matt Brown, I'd give him a better shot than D-Rod.
That should have been the fight, they could have made for him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like a Matt
UFC,
Brown.
To me, they wasted this whole thing. I talked about this last week, but like, Kevin Lee's under 30. I know he's taken some damage. I know he's, bounced around weight classes, but he's a good self-promoter. He's an exciting fighter. People are gravitating towards him, whether you hate him or love him. That's something you don't get very often in the UFC. And I know he's expensive, but honestly, I would rather have him over 5 Contender Series fighters that people aren't even going to watch because there's too many fighters on the roster. That's my perspective. And I think whoever gets Kevin Lee, they will get some advantage of his promotional skills and everything else. But I also think that comes down to management as well, where you got to say, look, you're fighting D-Rod on short notice. No thanks. Let me get a full camp in with a proper opponent. Because he had 2 Sean Brady fights fall through, right? Because he had an injury, then Brady had the injury, and then he had to, Brady had, I think, staph or something, and then he had to fight D-Rod. So yeah, don't really agree with that. Okay. Thanks everyone for watching. Really appreciate it. Download the Fantasy Fanatics MMA app. I got to put my picks in. I forgot to do it, but I made a note of it, so they will be in there. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button on this video. JHK, anything you got coming up this week that you want to plug for the viewers that they might want to be tuning into?
Well, I got a bunch of, prospect videos, interviews on the regional scene, pretty much men and women that are going to be in the UFC probably in 2022. I just uploaded Andre Ewell, Justin Tafa, Mohamed Makhachev, Derek Minner. And then I got a bunch of interviews from for UFC 269, Emmett. Who else do I have? Emmett,
you got everyone.
Eric Anders, Derek Minner, Tony Kelly, Jillian Robinson, a lot of similar guys, a lot of the fighters that James interviews. So, check his out.
So watch mine first, and then you can watch his after.
And Jack Attack, I didn't mean to hurt any feelings about the philosophy thing.
No, he's just kidding
your
around.
opinion's yours, my opinion's mine. It's all good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he wasn't attacking anyone, pun intended. check out my preview of UFC 269 with Laura Sanko. I interviewed her last week. Really good insight from Laura onto the women's fight. Because I asked her, I was like, how does Juliana Pena win this? She had a really good answer for that. Also talked, Poirier Oliveira. I'll have clips of that up on my channel, but the full interviews on the Fanatics View channel, which you can find. I have the interview in my UFC interviews playlist, so make sure you check that out. Other than that, just grinding away. I got a bunch of regional interviews. I talked to an amateur fighter yesterday. Got a few more amateur guys I'll be interviewing this week, which I love. And I want to end on this. John, you had a great quote yesterday. I actually want to pull it up here. I know we're running off of time a little bit, but let me find the quote here that you had. If you interview fighters and don't speak to or build relationship with prospects, you're doing a massive disservice to yourself and the fighters. There's a level you can reach just to interview the biggest names, but 95% of the media is not there yet. Don't neglect the future. That is some of the best advice you can hear. There's so many up and comers I see covering the sport that refuse to talk to prospects. So they're like, oh, I need to get the eyeballs. That's not the way to do it. So many relationships I've had early with fighters that people didn't know are now mainstays in the UFC. And guess what? I'm getting the first interviews with them. I'm getting easy access to them because you built those relationships. That's keynote. And I don't know if you saw Chris Weidman like that tweet yesterday. I don't know if you saw that, but
he did.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. And I don't even follow Chris Weidman. So someone had retweeted it or saw it and he liked it. And so I think a lot of these guys know, and I hear this all the time from fighters. Jordan Wright, I interviewed him yesterday. He's like, look, I don't do any interviews. I'll do them with you because you did them with me in LFA and, all that. So just keep in mind, if you're any aspiring media members out there, don't neglect the prospects. I'll interview anyone. I'll interview an amateur fighter. I'll interview Volkanovski. It doesn't matter. You got to treat every interview the same. So
I got 2 amateur interviews coming. That's locked and loaded. Are probably the 2 best guys in the UK right now. They're going to turn pro in 2022. It's going to come out on the channel pretty soon. Also, another thing about that is when you interview guys when they're prospects, their manager could be managers of the bigger names.
Fighters. Exactly.
And they could link you up to those bigger names. And because you covered the guys that were coming up, and those guys will be loyal to you, and then that could open up your access to somebody that's much bigger, much higher profile. And sometimes you get surprised, man, because I've been surprised many times throughout the years for interviews, man. I was shocked by sometimes.
Or they have teammates like I've had,
exactly.
I've had fighters say that, oh, I saw your interview with such and such, and they know that you're not like ego. Like ego's a big problem in this industry with a lot of. Remember, I sent you that screenshot yesterday. That other media guy, like there's some people just don't get it. It's not about you. It's about the mutual kind of exposure for both the fighter and the media member as well. Anyways, we could do a whole podcast on this. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Follow us both on Twitter, Instagram, you name it, and we'll see you next week.